Okay, students, I am very excited to provide this next interview for you because this is a very close friend of mine. We are joined today by Darby Brown. And Darby, welcome. And if you could please take a couple moments to introduce yourself and tell us what it is that you have for a career.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Fritz. And my name is Darby Brown. I graduated from GCS in 2004 and was at Greenville from kindergarten through 12th grade. After graduating high school, I went to Syracuse University and got a major in public policy before teaching math for a few years and got a master's in math education. And after that, I decided to go to law school, and I went to Northwestern University in Chicago, got my degree from there, and moved back to New York to practice law. And I am a commercial real estate attorney.
And when you say New York, you mean Manhattan?
Yes, yep, back to Manhattan. Yep.
Okay, great.
Can you walk us through your typical day of field of work?
Sure, absolutely. I spend a lot of my time writing, and I write contracts, usually purchase and sale agreements or loan documents for transactions involving real estate projects. So I deal with things like office buildings, multifamily apartment buildings, hotels, shopping centers. So these are very large, expensive deals that people are buying and selling properties, or they're getting loans to help them pay for the ownership of properties. And once we write our agreements, we have to negotiate them with the other parties. And a lot of our work involves, deciding on what is fair for our client, listening to the concerns of, the other side and what they're worried about. And then we come to an agreement that works for everyone, and then we can move forward with the transaction. And another important part of my work is that we do diligence on the commercial properties. So that means we review everything that we can find out about the property. We learn about, the physical structure. We learn about any documents that are recorded against the property that, the property needs to comply with. We'll read different lease documents, different management documents, really trying to learn everything we can about the property so we can explain everything that we know to our client before they buy the property or before they make a loan on the property, so they really understand what they're getting into.
Sounds like some thorough reading and writing is essential in your everyday work, so you've got to have a knack for that. So what do you love most about your job?
Sure. Yeah, I really like the collaborative nature. I really like working in teams. Even though we represent our client and we want to get the best deal for our client, we are very collaborative with the other side in getting the deal done in a way that works for everyone. I think people often think of lawyers as, people who like to argue or people who, want to be in court and dealing with litigation. And when you're a transactional attorney, you actually don't spend any time in court. You spend a lot of times just working on deals and helping people, meet their financial goals. And, when you're in real estate, you're dealing with, transactions for properties. And it's really neat in New York because, the architecture is amazing. The size of the buildings and the size of the projects is incredible. And, there's so many different types of buildings that you can deal with in New York City. We deal with hotels and we deal with, huge skyscrapers and office buildings and, some of our favorite restaurants, get involved sometimes. So it's really cool to kind of live in a city where there's so much activity, and especially in real estate.
What kind of skills are needed for your job? So like trainable skills or soft skills?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it's really important for you to be organized and, learn how to pay attention to detail. I think that you need to be able to communicate well. And I think, in terms of more trainable skills, you need to be a strong writer, comfortable reading a lot of material fairly quickly. Mathematics actually comes up a lot, especially when we're dealing with complicated financial transactions. So really everything that you learn in school in terms of skills is very applicable. We're on the computer all day, so you definitely need technical computer skills as well.
Thank you. So, hearing a little bit about what you love about your job and the skills that you need, what are some challenges in your job?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is, that things move very quickly, especially in commercial real estate. People want to get their deals done on a very tight time frame. So a lot of the time, you're expected to move very quickly, and you're supposed to, draft your documents very quickly, and people usually want things on a quick time frame. So you're sometimes working late hours. But I think that's what kind of makes it exciting, is that, everything is really happening in real time, and, you don't get bored on deals. Each deal that I work on will maybe last 3 months or so, and then you get to start a whole new project. So things are always changing, always moving, but it can be very, crush time is very intense. So that's probably our biggest challenge.
So you talked about this a little bit like just now, but what's your work environment looking like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been remote since the pandemic started, but before that, we're all in an office building together. It's very collaborative, very team oriented. Everyone definitely wants to help each other where they can, and everyone's very professional. And it's really nice being able to see everyone in person, and really miss that now, because if you ever have a question or don't understand something, it's great to just be able to walk into the office next to you and really work through a problem together.
Yeah, I think that kind of everywhere is seeing that shift. Everyone's had to adjust their environment. I mean, Jaden, you as a student, and me working in education, and even a lawyer in Manhattan. I mean, everyone has had to really adjust to what's happening and kind of change their work environment. But it is what it is. And I will admit that sometimes it's for the best. I mean, this is really cool that we get to do an interview like this, and this maybe wouldn't have happened before. So sometimes those changes can be positive too. So understanding that this question is kind of difficult for any career, I'm going to ask about salary, because there's so much range in careers in terms of salary. But if you could just comment in terms of what the salary ranges are for the various levels in your field, and with that, if you could comment on whether or not there are opportunities for advancement in a position such as yours.
Sure. I think that's a really great question. Really, it does depend on the kind of lawyer that you are and the kind of place that you work. So if you are in a nonprofit job, or if you work for the government, I would say, starting salary is probably around $50,000 or $60,000. If you work for a for-profit firm, or a large firm, a starting salary can be around $100,000, sometimes as high as $180,000. So it can be very lucrative. And there are salary advancements, at least for big firms like mine. You can pretty much count each year that you are going to get a raise, and it continues up. And eventually, after you are at a firm for a long time, if you ever decide to make a partner, which means you're a part owner of the law firm, your salary can be very high, and as high as $400,000, $500,000 even. So it can be a very lucrative profession.
I know that you obtained a lot of education before you came to where you are now. So were there any classes in middle school or high school that you took that connect with what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah, I think I can make a connection really with every class that I took in middle school and high school. It's really all about, learning how your brain works, and learning how to study, and learning how to absorb information. And I think in that sense, every class can be really helpful. In terms of the most, applicable classes to my day-to-day, I would definitely say English. Learning how to read and write is extremely important. And actually math comes up a lot. As I mentioned, we deal with a lot of very expensive, very complicated financial transactions. So really understanding, basic math and complicated formulas really comes into play all the time.
I think Mr. Evans would be happy to hear that. So I may suggest that he watch this interview, right, Jaden? I think you appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yes. So, I'm hearing about the classes, and I think that makes perfect sense. But I do also want to mention that, you were involved in a lot of clubs and activities, extracurricular opportunities when you were in school. Do you think that any of that helped you kind of get to where you are at today?
Yeah, I would say that was equally as important for me as the actual academics. I was able to get involved in student government. I was class president for a few years in high school. I was, involved in student council, which was very relevant, and I played a lot of sports. I think all these things that help you, become a team player, learn how to work with other people, learn how to communicate, learn how to lead groups. I think all of those skills translate really well, and I think I benefited just as much from my extracurricular activities as I did, within the academic setting. And one thing that I think is interesting, I've been doing actually a lot of interviews for people hoping to join my law firm. So I've been looking at a lot of resumes lately, and the top line is of course your education, where you went to school, what your grade was, and then underneath that it's all your job and work history. But the bottom of the resume is an interesting place where people write down things that they're interested in or things they feel passionate about. And that's really where things like your clubs in high school and sports and other activities can really be helpful on your college resume. It gives you something to talk about during your interviews, and it kind of shows your personality and things that you care about outside of your successes and grades.
I love that. That's perfect. It's a chance to kind of see who someone is beyond the classes they took and the grades that they received, because people are so much more than that. So perfectly said. Thank you so much, Darby Brown, for giving us this interview for your career. And for the folks who did choose this video, if you are interested in learning more, or maybe there was a question that we asked that you really wanted to dig deeper with, Darby has given us permission to follow up with her. So you would just reach out to me and I'd be happy to connect us back with Darby to get any of those questions answered. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks so much, everyone.